Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Lone Wolf Real Estate Roundtable. My name is Jimmy Kelly. I'm the CEO of Lone Wolf. We are very excited to present to you a power panel of real estate experts today. As you're all aware, real estate is one big community. And in these unprecedented times, we think it's more important now than ever to make sure that we're communicating, we're sharing ideas, thoughts, strategies, and really just ways that we can work together to focus on how we can improve our business and how we can come out of this pandemic era. And really that's the spirit of this panel discussion today. We hope you find value in it and appreciate your attendance. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Graham and let him moderate the discussion. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jimmy. For those of you who do not know me, have quite a few people on the line today, so we're very excited to get started. I'm the product director for our transaction management business at Lone Wolf. Unfortunately, Matt Keenan had a personal matter today. It was a little bit last minute, but I definitely appreciate that he chose me as a substitute, and I'm very excited to introduce and talk to some of our experts on the line today, and I hope that everyone will take away some excellent learnings today. So why don't we go ahead and get started? And one thing to note, just there are a lot of realtors on the line today, so please, go ahead and submit as many questions as you can, and we will get to as many as we can at the end of the session. So yeah, please go ahead and just put the questions in the chat, and we will answer them toward the end. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. Just a reminder, Wendy, Joel, JP, and Val, thanks for joining us today. But when I ask this first question, maybe just introduce yourself, your role, and where you're from and what you're seeing. So yeah, first obvious question is, the markets are different everywhere. Like, what's the climate in your area? Maybe we'll just go around the table and maybe start with you, JP, in Texas.
Well, thank you, Lone Wolf. Thank you for putting this together. Yet another wonderful sunny day here in North Texas. Week number 4 for me in quarantine. So to all you guys watching across the United States, we hope that you're staying safe and being patient, and we're all doing our part here to get this thing over as soon as possible. So my name is JP Piccinini. I'm the founder for a company called JP and Associates Realtors, recently relabeled affectionately JPAR. Some of you guys may have heard of our company. If not, I started the company in 2011, late 2011. But before that, I was a realtor. I was a team leader. I was a broker. I was a broker owner. And then after all that, decided that the title founder was something that I wanted to pursue. So I founded JP and Associates Realtors in September of 2011. Today, we operate in 14 states and expanding just about every week. We have a couple more states to announce next week. We have a little over 2,500 agents, and we operate 2 companies. We operate the brokerage-owned stores, which are only in the state of Texas, and they are the brokerage is the #1 independent brokerage in the state of Texas. And then the other arm is our new kid on the block, which is the franchising company that operates 23 offices across typically the Southern Belt. We just launched in Michigan in the Bay City area. So it was all Southern states until Michigan decided to pop up there. So exciting times. I've definitely sold my fair share of homes in hundreds and hundreds. I was the #1 agent in my market for a while. My team was very successful. So once an agent, always an agent, and I love to be able to check back and give back to the agents. So very well involved with the brokerage and the franchise agent side of things because I just genuinely love it. So what is going on in my market? You guys all know that every real estate market is a little different, and we could break it down to hyper local, but also to the type of real estate that's about. So I'm gonna just focus on North Texas, let you guys know what's going on here. That's outside my windows, Frisco, Texas, home of the Dallas Cowboys. And the market is actually very solid, very, very vibrant. Number of showings have decreased very much like the rest of the United States, down about 70%, but agents have become resourceful, more so than ever. Innovation is the mother of all inventions, and long story short, sales are happening. We have an abundance of our agents in multiple offer situations and really writing multiple offers every weekend. So it's a little surreal. Off the record, I can't believe that people are putting homes on the market in this environment, but certainly are. It is unseasonably low for spring, but it's happening. We're seeing really typically like a December we expect May to be a December-like month, which is not awful, but of course is not the May that we're all used to.
Thanks, JP. And Wendy, how about yourself? What's going on in your area?
Hi, everyone. I'm Wendy Forsyth. I'm an industry consultant, coach, and also serve as the Chief Brand Officer for Fathom Realty. Fathom operates in 23 states across the country, and I can give you kind of a little bit of a scope of kind of local markets in different areas. I personally am located in Southern California, is where I live. I'm on week 6 of safer at home measures here. And it's a trying time for sure. I would say on the good news note is that as I talk to realtors across the country, we're still finding ways to get business done. And I think we're learning how to be efficient in a different way. And as challenging as this time is, there's also a lot of silver linings that we're seeing in just how we're embracing technology and engaging with one another like this. So it has certainly been an unprecedented time as some of the catchwords that we're all using these days. I would say we're anxious to talk sort of post safer at home and what that looks like, returning to a new normal. Been working a lot on how we prepare for that as realtors, as broker owners, as an industry. And I know those are going to be topics that we talk about today. So it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you for including me.
Fantastic. And Joel, how about yourself?
I'm Joel Singer. It's a pleasure to be here. Hello, everyone. I'm the CEO of the California Association of Realtors. Like Wendy, I'm in Southern California, but our association deals with members throughout the state. Our marketplace is also seeing closings. Our volume going into the downturn and the shelter in place, which is pretty much statewide at this point, was extremely strong. We were running 10 to 15% above last year's numbers. At the moment, we are seeing a slowdown. The slowdown is most pronounced in listings. We are still seeing sales go into escrow with a whole different set of conditions around them. And particularly, we're having new documents and new forms that we put out to all our members that are really post shelter in place or 75-day to 90 to even 120-day escrows. So we are seeing activity, but my concern is that we're seeing activity at the lower levels, at a November, December level. And unfortunately, this is our peak selling season. So I think we're concerned. The ability to open up is going to be very, very slow in California, is my impression. And so from that standpoint, we think members will adjust to the market. They're doing it. There are sales, but it is making a difference. And people are very anxious at this point.
Thanks, Joel. And Val, last but not least, but introduce yourself and what's going on in your market.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I have been in real estate 22 years. I am a consultant, writer, and full-time educator now for the last 15 years in real estate. I work with clients all over North America. So I personally am in Michigan. We are a non-essential state. I am in week 6 of complete and total shutdown here in Michigan. It's definitely been an interesting experience to watch that sort of wave over the US. The clients that I'm working with are all over the board. So we have people that are in a state of total fear and frustration. We have people that are in a state of curiosity of what comes next. We have people that are working on adapting really quickly to technology and figuring out how they can survive and thrive in the situation that they're in. It really depends on the timeline. So we're seeing extremes in some areas. I agree with Joel. I think in our area, it's going to be a very slow restart, even though we had a very hot market here. But we're also the 3rd largest hotspot for the virus in the US here. So I think we're going to see some impact for that. So yeah, a little bit of everything.
Makes complete sense. And I mean, everyone sort of mentioned this disruption, but just to go in a little bit further on that, what's sort of the biggest adjustment that you've seen, Val, and then maybe Wendy, in terms of how agents have had to adjust? What have you seen they've adjusted?
Biggest disruption is just a change from routine. I think that in a spring market, a lot of people were in a very comfortable place of this is how it's always been done. This is how I've always done it, and I'm chugging along in that space. And I think a lot of people are in a place of either they're frozen because they don't know what to do, or they're absolutely adapting as fast as they can. I think there's a lot of freedom right now to fail. There's a lot of freedom to try new things, take risks, try technology, get in front of a camera, have technological difficulties, and wing it. And so I think that works in people's favor right now. I think in a situation of crisis and chaos, it's absolutely okay to say, I don't know if this is going to work, but we're going to try it because everybody else is trying it as well. So I think that's the biggest disruption that I'm finding is people are just having to change mindset from this is the way we've always done it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that what I'm experiencing talking with agents is, my plan got blown up, right? And I think for all of us, our 2020 plan got blown up. But specifically for most agents, if I generated the majority of my business from open houses, well, I don't have open houses anymore to do that with. And I'm probably not for who knows how long. If I generated a significant amount of my business through door knocking, well, guess what? I'm not going to be able to do that type of farming anymore. And who knows, when we are again. So then the question becomes, how do I, generate leads? How do I find buyers? How do I find sellers in this new, world we find ourselves in? I know I want to continue business, but I had these two big areas that were the bulk of my business in the past. I need to shift and I need to pivot. So, depending on how agents generated business in the past, I think has a lot to do with how they're feeling right now. And for many, as Valerie said, it is a freedom to fail. I love that. They're getting to try some new things, and those that are being open-minded and embracing that, I think are in a much better mindset than those that aren't. And I spend a lot of time working on my own mindset and, talking with people about, look, we've got to keep our mindset and our health at the forefront of this.
True. Yep, definitely some big adjustments. A little bit more specifically, Wendy, like what do you think their short-term, for all the realtors on the call today, what do you think their short-term game plan should be to generate more business or other areas or things that they could be doing, either short-term or long-term, I guess? What's their game plan?
And I think we're seeing evolutions of this as time goes on. So I think all of us, the first couple of weeks were, advising, clients and our agents, reach out to your sphere of influence, reach out to your database, ask them how they're doing, engage, stay in touch, make sure you're nurturing those relationships. Then I saw a pivot after we got through that, right? There's only so many times I can call my database and say, hi, how are you? So we saw a pivot start to happen around really educating. There's so many questions that, homeowners, potential buyers have about what's happening in the market. So what I've seen is the really sort of savvy agents have migrated their messaging to answering those questions and keeping them up to date on what's happening locally in my market. What can we expect? Everything from, the amount of showings to we're still getting properties closed, and we're seeing sort of those stories being shared. So I think that's kind of the phase that we're in now. And I think that, as I said, many of us are preparing for what does happen then as we start to reopen. And, how does that impact our business and what does that look like? So I think sort of staying in touch with your sphere of influence is a big part of it. And then working on building your brand is the second part of sort of the two things I would recommend that agents focus on right now.
That's a good point. I don't think many realtors understand the influence they have in their local community, and that's really important to emphasize. Joel, is there anything you want to add to that in terms of what realtors should be focusing on for their short-term or long-term game plan?
Well, at this point, we're stressing putting the infrastructure in place that allows you to do a better job with virtual transactions. And that infrastructure includes a lot of Lone Wolf products, obviously, but also includes just having the right kind of tools, making sure that you in those areas where you still can, and there are still a number of areas in California where you can, you bring in the right photographers, you make sure you've really done staging, whether it's virtual staging at this point is starting to grow. We can see it in our partner relationships. There's a lot of things you can do because there is demand out there. It's just a matter of getting enough exposure for the homes and doing it in such a way that your clients feel safe. And so we're doing a lot of work talking to members, and we've talked to 30,000 members via webinars and other things in the last 3 weeks on how you can just be a better agent in an environment where, if you possibly can, you need to do everything virtually. And there's a lot of tools and a lot of things people can learn.
Awesome. And I know we'll talk about some of those tools as well, but JP, having served and filled a lot of the roles within real estate, what are you prescribing to your agents today?
And since this is a panel with a lot of agents, I'm going to throw it back to 2007 and 8 when I was an agent. I got into real estate in 2005 when I was a rookie agent, and 2-3 years later the market crashed, and of course all I had to go by was what the veterans were telling me, and they had never seen anything like that before either. So not knowing any better, ignorance was bliss back then. I didn't know that agents were all going to bail ship. I had a very I've always been a hard worker. I mean, nobody's ever had to tell me to get out of bed and get to work. Even from the day that I got my license, I was suited up in the office at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I sometimes wouldn't leave until about 8 o'clock at night. Those are the days that we physically were in the offices all day using our fax machines and the books. When I was selling real estate, we still had MLS books. Of course, everything evolved, and the market crashed, and I saw a lot of agents leave, but the business. And that, of course, resulted in me gaining a lot of market share. So instead of cutting expenses, instead of cutting advertisement, I started increasing my expenses, my advertisement expenses, and my efforts. If I did an open house on Saturday and I saw success, I would do it again on Sunday. It wasn't anything new to have 2 open houses a weekend. It was a necessity for me to sell, because my son at the time was 1 year old, and my daughter was 2.5. Had a mortgage to pay, and failure wasn't an option at all. So I just worked harder, and of course, as I worked harder, I got luckier, as a lot of people think, right? Which has nothing to do with luck. So I encourage all you agents out there. Most of you, and Joel, you could probably have a great stat on that, have joined the association probably in the last 5 years. In 2010, we had about half as many realtors in this industry, in this trade that we do now. So a lot of you have never really been through a tough market, and I don't think this is a tough market at all. I think everybody here is telling you that sales are still happening. It's really a matter of mindset, as Wendy said, but it's also a chance for you guys to sharpen your skills and out-bleep your competition that is not willing to put in the work, or is not willing to necessarily treat this business like a true profession, and is really in it for the long run. So it's an amazing career. I've been blessed by it. I've been through some tough times, but it's never, what happened to me after the crash? My business just kept increasing, because I treated it like a business. So it sounds a little cliche, but treat it like a business, get to work every day, keep investing, find ways to go spend more in your business to advertise it. Right now, advertisement is cheap. Right now, advertisement is like 50 cents on the dollar. So if you can go in and increase your lead spend or your time that you put in your business, now's the time to do it.
I love that your success there came out of a former disruption. So a lot of parallels there, right? So yeah, thanks for that. Joel, just going back, you mentioned a second ago about tools and resources. Do you mind just elaborating on, where agents can, find some of the tools at their disposal, and how they just kind of stay informed on what new information is coming out?
Well, from our perspective, obviously, our job is to try to educate people and expose them to different tools, and we've done a lot of that. We were running webinars on a bi-weekly basis on how to prospect in the current environment, how to basically increase your showings when not doing them physically. And those tools, are across the board. Obviously, right at the moment, I think the most interesting aspect is how can you expose your property in such a way that it's almost indistinguishable from having a physical showing. And so people who've used the various virtual showing tools are having success. and we're seeing a fair number of those sales. And again, you know, the clientele is reluctant to have people come through their homes, but we're seeing certainly demand is out there, and with the number of listings that have dropped, activity is, you know, we haven't seen a huge increase in the time on the market. In fact, that seems to be fairly constant at the moment, which is a real surprise because we have had a drop off. So people who are able to expose their homes to create an experience in particular, and virtual showings come up here. And as I said, virtual staging is relevant here, and the ability to also work with your client to do, you know, simple things like simple videos where your clients have a question about a property they're looking at. All of that is at the moment critical from our standpoint. And then managing the transaction has also become a bit of a challenge. Obviously, the lending environment is perhaps my biggest concern as I look at the market for the next few weeks and months, is, you know, kind of controlling the lending environment at this point. And you've got a lot of tools to do that as well. And so from our perspective, you know, it's the agent who comes to work every day, and the agent who's, you know, focused on creating opportunities. Those opportunities are still there. More importantly, you know, and I think, you know, Wendy and Valerie mentioned it, the moment the shelter in place comes off, there's going to be, from our perspective, a significant increase in demand. And you've got to be thinking about that, and also recognizing that when that increase in demand comes, you can't show everything the way you used to. You're going to be equally reliant on your ability to virtually show sales and use different tools. You know, open houses are going to be delayed, but everything else can be in place to maintain a fairly good volume of sales from our perspective.
Good point, Joel. And I think to tack on to that, I mean, people still have their life moments, right? They're not going away. People, yes, the market slowed down, but people are still need homes, right? So maybe Val, we haven't heard from you in a sec in the last little bit. What do you think agents can do to keep this new business coming in?
I think the number one thing we're encouraging people to do is serve the people that you have in front of you right now. I think, you know, spending a lot of time, effort, and energy trying to build your pipeline right now is not necessarily the right way to go. In my opinion, I think, you know, serving the people that you have in your pipeline, in your database, the people you've worked with in the past are really important. I think also looking for solutions, not problems. I see a lot of agents out there right now that are focused on what could happen or what might happen instead of what they can handle right now, what their options are available to them, the resources that they have. I think that now's a great time to look at ways that you offer the services that you do in new ways. We've been talking about disruption forever. I mean, it's been the #1 drinking game at every conference for a decade. And now we're seeing it. And people are like shocked that this is actually happening. But the reality is whether this looks like a virus or it looks like technology, we were ready for disruption a decade ago, and it's here. So, I mean, I think what people need to do right now is help as many people as they can with the resources that they have in front of them. Instead of worrying about what's going to happen down the road. Nobody knows. I mean, if anybody thinks they have a crystal ball to what a year from now looks like, they're crazy. But I mean, I think the best thing that we can do right now is take the resources we have and try and use them in new ways. Try and create short-term solutions and long-term leadership. If we can really focus on what we want people to know us as and know our business for and associate with our brand, and use that information to steer the decisions we're making right now, the really tiny decisions, I think that's the best focus.
Sense. Anyone else want to add to that? Wendy or JP? Just yeah, again, what can agents do to leverage their existing resources, but also, you know, generate the business or keep the business they have, you know?
I mean, it's a big question, and I'm sort of watching some of the questions come in. So let me touch a little bit on virtual tours, right? Or virtual tools, because we're talking a lot about like this disruption and doing business in a different way. I think exactly what we're doing here, we're going to see a whole lot more of it. And many of us have been doing this for years. But this situation has just, you know, made it so mainstream. So I think we're going to have a real hard time. For example, as you know, a broker owner convincing agents that I want them to drive across town to come live to a meeting, where they're like, well, can't we just do it on Zoom? Can't we just do a GoToMeeting? They'll still, you know, we still want the social interaction, but it will be different ways. So virtual companies have, been living and breathing this for a long time. So I think that we're going to see a lot more of that become commonplace. I think for our clients as well, that building relationship with a face-to-face, we've become a lot better at doing, video calls, FaceTime, Skype, Zoom, all of that. We'll continue, I think, to do more of that. I would predict that as the market starts to open up again and we do, get busier and can leave our homes and we get into sort of the next phase, that pent up energy that our buyers and sellers are going to have is going to require agents to be on their game in a better way than they ever were before. And what I mean by that is there's going to be a certain impatience is what I believe from buyers. So if a buyer reaches out to an agent, they're going to want response from that agent right away. If they're ready to put an offer in, they're going to want to do that. And if you're not there, they're going to go to another agent who's ready to respond and there. So I think now is a really good time to think about your own systems as an agent, how you respond, how you stay in touch, how you engage, how you follow up. Because when we turn here, there's going to be lots of opportunities lost if we're slow to response.
That's a very good point.
I'll just say, and I tell all our agents, and hopefully this will resonate for a lot of you, be cool, calm, and collected. One of the books that I read before I even got into real estate, I remember it compared our role to Iceman, right? Be the ice woman, be the Iceman. Our clients are paying us to remain in control, to negotiate on their behalves. Certainly can't lose our cool. Certainly with everything we have going on, it's always a sunny day for you in your life as an agent, because your clients expect you to have that same attitude and not add on to the stress of already enough stressful situation and transaction that they're going through. So be that, hustle up, and just know, this is everybody, every single person that you come in contact with that's wearing a mask or not these days is likely not homeless, okay? They either will have a home that they own or they'll live in a lease rental place. If you are to be that agent, it's really to how good of a relationship you establish with those people right now. And I can tell you, it's weirdly enough to say this while we're sitting here in Zoom, but speaking to our agents, we have never been closer to our agents and the brokers than ever before, because we are constantly, we start at 8 o'clock in the morning having webinars with our entire enterprise. We didn't do that before coronavirus. I don't know why we didn't. We could have had 8 o'clock sessions, before every day. There's no really additional resources that are coming into place for that. So get close to your clients as close as you can. Don't lose the deal over the client. Keep the client, keep the client, keep the client. Forget about the deal. Plenty of deals are going to happen down the line as soon as this thing smooths over.
I love those answers. It's still that human engagement doesn't change, right? So good points, everyone. I guess for some of the, realtors were working or agents were working with somebody and they backed off on a deal. These are your clients today. Like, what do you do about that? What would you tell an agent? Joel, I know you have to leave and at the half mark. Do you want to go first and answer that question? Like, what does an agent do to re-engage people that have backed off a deal?
Well, again, I think having that relationship, understanding your client's needs and wants is critical. And what we are hearing from a lot of our agents and members are that there are people who just need to take a time out, not for financial reasons, but because of health concerns. And we're saying, that's to be expected. Some of them have these life moments. Again, the summer season, closing in summer is really meaningful if you have children and you have to change schools. And so every one of those situations is going to be different, but the extent to which you can understand those needs is going to dictate, how you work with that client, how you establish the individual sales plan for that particular property or for someone searching for a home, what their timing is. And we're encouraging our agents to recognize that in some instances, it may be a good idea to wait. But in other instances, you need to position yourself to be there and be there now virtually. Again, the quality, I think one of the things we all learned in this episode over the last few weeks is that the quality of engagement you get on a virtual basis using Zoom and all the other technologies is incredible. You have people's attention to a much larger degree than you've had before. You know, we were talking about conferences. In a conference, we're all sitting there passively or working on our iPads. When you're in a Zoom conference and you're doing it on a pure video basis, you have a lot higher degree of attention. And we think that degree of attention allows the market to continue at a much higher level than we've seen in the past. And you know, although it's not going to be normal and there's going to be demand disruption, you know, given the economic slowdown outside of real estate, in the long run, real estate is going to do very, very well out of this. I think we all learned a few lessons here, one of which is your home really, really matters. So for residential realtors, I think they're going to have a lot of things that they're going to have to do. And above all, be responsive, stay close to your client, understand their needs, and give them the most meaningful alternatives. So from my perspective, this is going to be a deep disruption for a couple of months. It's going to take a while to come out of it. But in the long run, I think the lessons learned and the opportunities for residential real estate are going to be every bit as good as they were going into this, and in fact, even better coming out. So I apologize that I have to leave. Thank you very much. And again, you know, from our perspective, you know, we're here to help our members. As I say, we're getting incredible volume on our legal hotline. We've established records in terms of one-on-one counseling on transactions, and our relief hotline is getting 500 plus calls a day, helping realtors fill out the various forms to get the assistance they need, and our seminars are full. And from our standpoint, when this is all said and done, we're also going to have a much better educated and a much more focused real estate community. And I thank Lone Wolf for putting this together, and I apologize for leaving.
No worries, Joel. Likewise, and we thank you for your experience and spending time with the realtors. I know you're going to leave, but we're going to put your email address so everyone they can answer all their questions. Will come to you. We are getting on. Thank you, Joel.
Bye, everyone.
Appreciate it. So, we are getting a lot of questions. Yep. Sorry, Wendy?
Graham, I think just to add on to what Joel just said a second ago about, you know, people who have backed off from purchasing, been having so many conversations from agents who are in situations where what they can and can't do is severely limited by their state and local regulations right now. And they're, you know, they're stressing and pleading with their clients to understand that they are legally not able to do some of the things that they're being asked to do. And even if they are legally able to do them, there are agents that have legitimate health fears around some of those activities. And so I think the golden rule applies here is that, you know, we're in a situation where so many realtors are asking their agents to understand the situation. And so I think we have to apply the same understanding in reverse to those clients that are saying, I have to take a break, or now's not the right time, or I'm scared. So, I mean, I think that goes both ways.
Don't add fuel to the fire. I can tell you guys a story. One of the agents was texting me last week about was under contract, and the buyer went through the appraisal of how home appraised fine, while the buyer demanded that the seller reduce the sales price by $30,000 or he was going to walk away. And I'm proud of her. She did a great job. She kept cool, calm, and collected, and told the buyer exactly what his obligations to the purchase agreement was, advised to seek legal counsel, stood back, didn't add fuel to the. So here's your options. You know, here's what you can and can't do. I've been going on national tour here. I'll be on Good Morning Texas tomorrow, and a lot of people, a lot of consumers are having that big question, like, if I buy a home now, is it going to tank? You guys have to provide empirical evidence of historical trends. We went back and pulled data from 1997 here in North Texas and provided that to our agents in terms of, you know, show this chart to every single one of your clients that thinks their home is going to tank, especially here in North Texas. I mean, in the worst of years, the prices decreased 5%. So data makes everybody feel better. It's non-opinionated. So use data to your advantage. Stay cool, calm, and collected, and just, you know, advise your clients as if they were you buying a home, and then you're going to be showered with referrals, more referrals than you could possibly imagine.
Makes sense. Wendy, anything to add to that, or I can ask another question if you like?
Yeah, I would just, you have to think the client first. I think the golden rule, and JP said, you know, the client before the deal. If the client is really uncomfortable, there's no script, dialogue, technique, sales tool that we should be using. We should be respecting that relationship first. The business will come. And I know that's tough if you're in a challenging financial situation yourself. And that's where just mindset and getting through this becomes an important part of it. But it's got to be the client first.
Makes sense. Another question here. I mean, obviously, and Val, I think you just mentioned it, right? Everybody has to abide by the local and state social distancing regulations. And Wendy, I think you touched on a couple of the tools, but maybe each of you go into a little bit further on in terms of what are the most important sort of tools or technologies that they can use to abide by social distancing regulation.
I mean, we're seeing, and we've said Zoom 3 or 4 times just on this call. Zoom, which is not what we're using for this call, but is very popular, is offering free accounts where you can simulate the type of call that we're having here through the Zoom technology. We're using GoToMeeting, which is another virtual tour that's available. There's free conference call, which is another free tool that, again, you can do video, you can do screen share, so you can use it for listing presentations, for buyers consultations. There's Skype, there's FaceTime, there's those ones that we're aware of. I think more than the tools, because finding tools like this is pretty commonplace now, it's how we use them is the important part of this conversation. So one of the things that we've found kind of a subtle shift in is sort of the difference between a video tour and a virtual tour. So a virtual tour is, usually a special camera that goes through the house that, you get done by a professional that you have, tagged onto your listings. What we're seeing a rise of now is the video tour, where I'm still live. I might be with my smartphone. I might be by myself at the property, but I have my clients on the other end of the phone using whatever tool it is, and we're walking and talking, through the property. And we call those video tours. And we're seeing a tremendous rise in that, where people just don't want to go out to the property. Sellers don't want a lot of people in their property, but we're still having a live engagement. We're still able to show properties and being safe and following all the social distance practices. So on our fathomrealty.com website, we've seen a huge uptick in leads coming in requesting video tours from our agents versus request a showing, which is normally what a lead might ask for.
Sense. Val, I know you're all about tools. Anything to add there?
I mean, I agree with Wendy. The tools are pretty easy to find. I mean, if you're not using digital signatures at this point, it is past time. So, that's definitely something that I think everyone should have access to, and getting really comfortable with your camera phone, like just getting comfortable getting on camera now. It's just, we've reached the point where you don't get the comfort level of practicing for years. Like, it's time. I think that using email is really interesting right now. I'm seeing we've kind of gotten through the first wave of all of those crappy, we're here for you, here's how we're cleaning our planes emails. And now emails are becoming really useful and helpful. And I heard something the other day saying, in this time right now where everything is controlled by an algorithm, what we see on our social feeds, what we're seeing, through the news, everything is controlled by an algorithm. Email is one thing that we have control over. We can subscribe and we can unsubscribe and we can delete and we can reply. And I think that's a really interesting point. Like, now is one of the best times ever to start using email, to be using, email tools that allow you to be really personal and give information and provide resources. Like, I'm telling clients right now, if you're not sending a newsletter to your base, to those people that really want to hear from you with really good stuff in it, you're missing an opportunity. So, I mean, I think that's definitely one of those tools that's it's a basic, but it's so important right now.
I just agree. Before we move on to this question, I think we're doing Lone Wolf this favor if we didn't say, make sure that you're using Transaction Desk and everything that Transaction Desk has to offer in your entire arsenal of tools. So we utilize it as a company. It's a one-stop shop for everything from writing contracts to name it. So it's replaced 3 different, if not 4 different softwares all in one. So Transaction Desk is actually free for most of the boards that most agents across the United States operate in, right, Graham? I mean, you guys are, how many MLSs is Transaction Desk available?
Well, we have Transaction Desk and/or ZipLogics across the entire US and Canada.
Essential. Board of the year.
Thank you. Appreciate that. That keeps us busy for sure. But yeah, you know what, actually, and Wendy, I don't know if you had anything to add, Wendy, but I wanted to get to the next question, which is really around data. I think you, Wendy, and JP definitely mentioned data. I mean, some realtors are afraid of data and they're not sure like what sort of indicators, data can they use to manage their business, especially to set them up for that success when the ramp comes. Like, how do they use data to their advantage at this point?
Well, I know
sorry. He wants to, JP, go first. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm just looking up. I'm trying to keep whoever is managing the chat screen. We have the chart that I shared with everybody. I just emailed it to you guys, so you should have it. And sorry, Wendy, don't mean to cut you off. I was reading. But use your local boards. You've got local boards have a lot of data. The one that I'm sharing comes from Texas A&M Institute of Real Estate, so it's available. You can research. NAR has an abundance of things, from data for us to just go on the NAR website, and there's a lot of statistics. What I really like is the Home Builders Association has some great historical data that we can plug in. So a little research. You don't have to be a data scientist or a rocket scientist to interpret charts. So there are plenty of them out there. Just educate, like the one that we're going to go and give somebody. Plus your MLS. Your MLS, you have a lot of historical data through the MLS. But if you don't have it, if you can't reach to it for whatever reason, get with your broker. They most certainly should be able to provide you with data.
Anything to add to that, Wendy, in terms of that or their pipeline sort of?
Yep. I think we always talk in coaching about leading indicators for our business and lagging indicators for our business. And I saw some questions in the chat about this, because if we look at closings, that's what we would call a lagging indicator. So, many of us reported, best Q1s ever, and even going into the first half of April, most of our companies are up, or a lot of agents' business is still up in terms of closings into April 15th. That's because of the work we did 30, 45, 60 days ago. So that's a lagging indicator. So when we look at leading indicators, we look at things like showings. So, there's been a lot of talk across the country about the, volume of showings has, drastically decreased up to, 80% in some markets. So there's some great research out there. Your local board can provide some research. As JP said, talk to your broker, but find out what's happening with the volume of showings in your market, because that's a leading indicator. Number of offers being written, find out from your broker. All of our software, Lone Wolf software, tracks all of this for us. We watch this, daily and looking at our reports, because that is a leading indicator. Like, that tells us what's going to happen. I think most of us are concerned not so much about April. Maybe May is a little shaky. It's kind of June is going to be like a tough month, because that's the, the lagging time frame that we're dealing with. So watch those leading indicators and plan for the lagging impact that they'll have on your business.
Thanks, Wendy. Yeah, and I think that addresses a couple of questions that came through, especially for new realtors to the business who are wondering about that. So thank you. Just jumping a little bit down, I want to leave some time for some of the questions that are coming in as well. So, last two questions, I guess, for each of you. Yeah, how do agents go from survive to thrive on this? We want to focus on that pent-up demand, and we've been talking a little bit like short term, but yeah, again, how, and maybe we've covered this. Feel free to repeat yourself or any new information on just, how do they go from this to that pent-up demand that we are all expecting?
I think my best advice for people right now is plant seeds and know that what you're planting, you're not eating right away. This is not a time where we're getting instant results. We're putting effort in that, like Wendy said, we're going to see down the road. Some of those leading indicators we can control, some we can't. So, we have the ability to plant seeds. Speaking specifically to a lot of the questions that are coming in around people who are in states that are under extreme shutdowns or non-essential orders. I can tell you from the experience of living in one of those states for the last 4 to 6 weeks, I get it. It's frustrating. And I see we've probably had 4 dozen of these questions come in around what do I do if I can't do a virtual tour, if I can't get a photographer in, if I can't do showings, if I cannot show up at the property, if I literally cannot stand 6 feet from somebody and let them in the house. It's super frustrating, and I totally understand that. And I'm talking to people who are in that boat every single day. If the house isn't vacant, I've seen some really creative things where they've had their buyer or their sellers do the virtual tour. I saw one last week where they strapped a GoPro to the dog and they had the dog go through the house. And yeah, was it great? And like, could you see all the details? No, but was it fun? Yeah, I mean, it gave you something to look at. And so I've seen kids do tours of their bedrooms on camera. I think there's some ways that we can do that. And in some cases, there are things we just can't do right now. So, we can move when others retreat when we can, but right now in some situations, we have to plant seeds and we have to wait for them to grow. And we have to love the people that we have in our pipeline as much as we can and give them as many resources as we can and prepare for when the time comes that we can start to adjust back into regular routine.
I think,
I do think that.
Go ahead, I'll give it to Wendy this time.
I was gonna say, I think one of the things that I hope will be a positive out of this is kind of that humanization of our lives. I mean, we're in a relationship business. We've always talked about that. And I think it's been, it's been fun. It's been nice to kind of see Valerie sitting in, her grandma's kitchen, like talking and Graham, somebody was commenting of like the light behind you, right? Like we know it's not perfect, right? Like that's our lives. Our lives are not perfect. And, we've seen that where the kids are walking through, and we've all seen all of the, online kind of fail meeting, funny videos out there. But part of engaging in video like this is we're seeing that, human side of all of us, I think, in a very authentic way. And that's part of what builds relationships. It's part of what builds engagement. And I hope as we go back to whatever our new normal is, maybe this part of our virtual relationships we can hang on to, because I think it's really a fun way to connect with people.
I appreciate that too, Wendy. And I think, that's a good point. Like the human engagement has actually increased a little bit. So hopefully what we're doing with each of the realtors on the call today, they're also doing with their clients. And so, I'm going to skip the last question and just go to, we have 15 minutes left. We do want to answer some questions on the line. So we'll go ahead, and Nick, I might need your assistance on this to pick out some of the questions. Maybe, and by the way, Wendy, JP, Val, you can see the questions too. So if you see any, I didn't have one off the bat, but well, maybe while I'm picking one of the questions, what's sort of your final words on just sort of, what you want to see, what change do you want to see from all of this? Maybe JP.
Wendy mentioned the human factor of it all. We're so, for an industry that's always seen disruption, as we call it, we're so stuck sometimes in the old ways of doing business. And I'm surprised how a lot of agents haven't thought about this, and this is shocking a lot, but use the seller to your advantage. Even if you're the buyer's agent, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having a Zoom 4-way call with the buyer's agent, the listing agent, and the clients on a call. It could be honestly the deal closure. It could be how you seal the deal. You see the kids walking around the house, enjoying the home, and truly treating the home like a real home should be. We have this old adage of, oh, buyers and sellers don't need to be talking to each other. They don't need to be sharing information. That's data's out there. If I wanted to get in touch with that seller, I could easily find in touch with that seller and get that information, whether it's their social media profiles or anything. If I really truly wanted to get in contact with a seller, I could as a buyer. So let's embrace that. They obviously want to sell their home. They have a reason why their home is in a market and it's chaos. You as a buyer have an interest in buying a home. Put everybody together. Create a win-win situation. Put everybody together, and just remember the golden rule, as has been said more than once. Do unto others as you like to be done unto yourself. That's it. Love that neighbor.
There's a good question here that came in. I think is very relevant. How do you deal with the clients that aren't comfortable with technology? Not sure who asked a great question. Maybe Wendy or Val. Maybe Wendy.
This is Val's area of expertise.
Yeah, go ahead, Val.
They'll just get comfortable with the rest of us. I think we've been making the joke for years of like, if you're not comfortable using video because you don't like how you look, like, guess what? That's how you look, right? Like, I make weird faces. I talk with my hands. If you meet me in real life, this is what you're going to see. So, I've actually been surprised that I find it's not clients as much as uncomfortable as it is us projecting our own discomfort on the clients. For me, it's just one of those things. I just tell people you got to get over it. Like, let's do it. I'm video calling you now. We'll practice. We'll practice on each other.
You got to love yourself more and more video the more you do it. I promise you.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know, like, get them to ask their kids to set them up. I mean, there's so many technologies that we're all mastering right now. Like, I talked to my mother over the phone through how to access her favorites in Hulu yesterday. So, like, we're all experiencing that discomfort of, like, your mom's calling you, figuring out, like, how do I find this show that I was watching? And we're all in that boat. So it's okay to say, all right, like, let's jump on let's join me, and I'll show you my screen and I'll show you how to do this, or, have your kid help you jump in and I'll show you. I think we all just have to address this like we would with a normal human in our own family of, we're going to get through this. I'm going to show you. It might take some extra time. I'm going to have to walk you through this like you're my grandmother. And in some cases, they are somebody's grandmother, and that's okay. Like, we're all learning. So it's all right. I do basic classes for people that are learning things that I can't judge them for not learning it before. That we're all in a different space. So just take the time and teach. And let me tell you what, like, if you're the person that sits down and teaches somebody how to open the screen and click on the thing, they will tell their friends and they will remember that you had the patience to do that.
Yeah. One thing that I've been playing with, I'll share this quickly, is a little app called House Party. If any of you haven't heard of it, go look it up. And it's a fun little app. And when you set yourself up in it, it's a video chat app. When you set yourself up in it, you can leave the notifications on when your friends join the house party, and your notifications will go crazy as your friends are logging in. And those friends are probably also some of your clients. And maybe those same clients that are kind of uncomfortable with video chat are in, playing, card games online with their friends on, Friday night virtual happy hour. So I think you might be surprised by the amount of virtual engagement that is just happening amongst families and communities out there, sort of outside of our typical business settings.
Yeah, yep. Exercise caution with that one, though.
I think the point is,
I didn't say business tool. I said fun little, app.
I have, like, in answer to the last question, Graham, I will say, I think it's interesting if we go back a ways to remember that the Renaissance came after the bubonic plague. The bubonic plague killed a third of the population of the planet, right? So that was a pretty intense disruption. And we don't have our Facebook memories from back then, but it was pretty intense. And what immediately followed that period of time was the Renaissance. And so I think we're going to see coming out of this, what I hope we're going to see coming out of this, is that people will be less inhibited to try new things, and they'll be more able to laugh at themselves when they make mistakes. But the number one thing that I hope comes out of this for our industry is finally the death of data suppression. Like, the people that have been saying, I'm not going to put the price in the ad so people will call me, or I'm going to have to make people sign up to see the photos. Like, I hope that we're seeing the end of that right now, because we are so trying to give people what they need to make these decisions virtually that we will finally realize, like, that's how it should be all the time.
Interesting insight and a history lesson. Thank you. There's two questions here that I'm going to pick out, because the one's on the list side and one's on the buy side. And thank you for whoever submitted these. And by the way, we are recording all of this. So if you missed a tool or you missed something, we'll have a recap and recording for you. But this question maybe for you, JP. on the list side, an agent was talking to their client and they said, should I list now or should I list later, right? And their broker's recommendation was list now. And maybe and I'll get to the buy side in a sec, but what advice would you give? Like list now, list later?
Well, does this seller need to sell now? And David Knox will say, do you need to go or do you need to stay, right? If you haven't watched some of David Knox's videos, are quite entertaining. So if you got to go, list now. If you don't have to go and you want to stay, stay. You know, fact is inventory is low. So I'm going to give you guys the no BS, what I would tell a seller. If you have to sell, then yes, let's put this on the market. Let's go and try to get rid of it ASAP. Let's price it aggressively. My technology, my tools are going to help market it properly. But if you can stay, I would encourage you to wait until this is over because inventory is still low. And we have a lot of pent-up demand coming up. I think I can still sell your home within 60 days. Let's plan conservatively for that. In fact, I know that I can sell it within 60 days. Be very confident with your rhetoric to your sellers. And let's wait. You know, I'll be here whenever you're ready. Again, you know, you're not losing the client over the deal. You're not stressing them out. Let them know everything's going to be okay. And if you don't have to leave, stay put for now. Because in the end, it was said showings were down. Although we're doing a lot of virtual showings, I think that's a little deceiving when you would just look at number of showings that's decreased. Because we have agents that are selling houses sight unseen like never before. So a part of that, I don't have a good understanding of how much percentage of that is really happening. But we also know that buyers aren't looking at 5 homes. You know, buyers are going out on Saturday and they're looking at the home that they want. That's it, only one. And they're putting an offer on that home. So that also skews the number of showings decrease that we've had in the past. I mean, gosh, I remember I would look at 30, 40 houses one weekend with one of my clients because we had so much inventory, right? Especially with real clients. But now it's, you know, you kind of like HGTV. You really look at 1, 2 homes and be done. So that's why showings are down. But if showings are down, if people aren't coming into your house to look at it, guess what? It's probably not really going to sell as fast as what you want and get to the dollars that you want. So long story short, if you have to sell, go ahead and put it on the market accordingly. If you got to stay, I would wait and revisit the decision in 30 days.
That's good insight. This next question kind of flip on the buy side, right? So on the buy side, what if you had an active buyer who now says, well, I'm going to wait and see, you know, what are some talking points, maybe Wendy, that you'd have for a realtor and you know, objection handling in that case?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to, I mean, it is a tough time to think about objection handling, right? So I think you need to be respectful of why they want to wait. So I would ask that question and really understand, you know, what is their frame of mind around this? Like, what are their concerns? Like, it is, like we said before, it's the client before the deal. I think there is, you know, some things you want to, you know, discuss with them, right? Interest rates could go up. How long do you want to wait? Like, do you want to wait 30 days? Do you want to wait 6 months? Like 6 months from now, it could cost you a little bit more than now. How important is it that you find the right home? Like, have you found the right home and you're not sure, or just you haven't found the right home? So it's a conversation and it's an ongoing dialogue. I don't think it's time for scripts and you know, sort of cookie cutter. If they say this, you say that. This is a time to connect with people, have a real conversation, treat them how you'd want to be treated, and respect that if they really want to wait, then they really want to wait. I think that's the most important thing we can do. You've got to be able to look at yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and say, like, I am proud of how I dealt with my clients through this.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely right. Ask questions before you respond. Ask questions. I mean, if you don't know what to say and you're frustrated and you're thinking, I need to go to a script, the first thing you should say is, tell me more. Like, tell me why you feel that way, and ask more questions, because everybody's got stuff going on that we don't necessarily know about. So many clients right now that are dealing with the fear of losing their jobs, or the fear of losing a family member, or, you know, just the stress of handling the fact that their kids aren't going back to school for a long time and they're having to deal with what that looks like. So yeah, I definitely think the response is always asking questions.
And I would say the flip of that is when somebody really does want to make the transaction happen, fight to make it happen for them. So find out like what needs to happen. Don't leave a stone unturned. And I'll give you an example. A client shared they had all contingencies removed, confirmation of financing in hand. The lender came back right before the closing and wanted additional confirmation of employment. And that's happening a lot out there in the market. The employer and the lender wanted a guarantee that the buyer wouldn't be laid off or furloughed. And the employer said, I can't give that in writing. The agent was resilient, got some great advice, asked some questions. Eventually, they worked it out that somebody from the buyer's employer had a phone conversation with the lender and said, look, we don't anticipate, like, we're not going to put this in writing, but we don't anticipate because of the type of function the person does in the company. And the lender accepted that conversation and the deal closed. That deal could have easily fallen apart. So be empathetic, ask the questions, but on the flip side, if you've got willing buyers and willing sellers, you're probably going to have to do a bit of mental gymnastics or transaction gymnastics to make some deals happen. And you got to be willing to do that too.
100%.
That's a really good applicable example for these days. Thanks, Wendy. And thanks JP, and thanks Val as well. We have run out of time. Unfortunately, we could go all day, but and we had hundreds of questions. So I really appreciate everyone that attended. If we weren't able to answer your question, we will do our best to follow up. We have the recording and we will have other sessions, and we really appreciate everything that you do. Just to recap, obviously you heard, use the data, use the tools that you have, stay informed. Most importantly, stay in touch with your customers. I learned out of this session that I can live without a haircut, as you can see, but apparently due to my background, I need a new home. So if anybody wants to sell me a new home or sell and buy a new home, I'd be happy to talk. But yeah, I think, and that speaks volumes. So really appreciate it. Wendy, JP, and Val, thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.